Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Rachel Clark. I'm the Development Director here at CFSA, and you have joined the workshop Building Successful Multi-Farm Collaborations. This is going to be a really exciting workshop. We have a presentation followed by a panel discussion. I encourage you all to please go ahead, hop into chat, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're joining from, and that's where you can ask questions throughout the presentation. And the speakers here can see and respond to them on our end. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in our speakers. Here's Laura. We have Becky. And let's see, Robin. All right, welcome everyone. So I'm going to hand it off to you all to do some introductions, and then I'm just going to take myself out of the screen. Laura, let me know when you want the slides up, and I'll bring those in. I can hear you, so just let me know when those are ready. Okay?
They're ready. Go ahead and bring them on in.
Go bring them on. All right, here we go.
And we do want to let folks know that we've got time at the end for questions, and that's where we'll be handling those. But go ahead and put them in the stream.
Okay.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Becky Bowen, and I am the program manager of a program called Cultivate NC at NC State Extension. And with me here today are Laura Lauffer and Robin Stout. Laura, you want to announce who you are?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Laura Lauffer. I work for Empowering Mountain Food Systems, a project of the Center for Environmental Farming Systems with NC State Cooperative Extension. So happy to be here. Robin?
Good afternoon, everybody. So good to be here. My name is Robin Stout. I lead the NC 10% campaign, a statewide local food project, as well as a new project called the Farm to Senior Services Project with some other folks. Those are out of the Center for Environmental Farming Systems and North Carolina Cooperative Extension.
Great. Thank you, Robin and Laura. We're going to get right into our presentation. I do want to give a little bit of background. My work in the past, before I joined Extension, actually focused on the development of producer and worker cooperatives. So I had a real interest in the concept of multi-farm collaborations. And I started working with Laura and Robin on this through Extension's local food program team way back in 2018. And of course, this concept of a multi-farm collaboration sort of started gaining some steam in the time of COVID. And so you'll see a little bit of historical research that we've done in this presentation, as well as some more recent research through the pandemic. So one of the lessons that we learned with respect to multi-farm collaborations and the pandemic is that we all had to pivot what we were doing before. And so we're going to show you this little animation that talks about how important it is to collaborate. So Laura, I can't hear it.
To get fresh produce, meat.
Okay, I'm gonna start it from the beginning. Sorry about that, folks.
The demand for local food is growing. More and more people are shopping at farmers markets and roadside stands, or ordering food boxes to get fresh produce, meat, eggs, and dairy from farmers that they know. It feels good to eat healthy and buy local, and potentially reduce our environmental footprint. Providing the quality, quantity, and variety of food demanded by consumers at an affordable price, while coordinating marketing and deliveries is difficult for one farmer to manage. How can small farmers together meet this growing demand? They can collaborate and cooperate. From production and harvesting, to marketing, sales, and distribution. Small farms will be more profitable, and more mouths will be fed with local food if farmers work together. Learn more about joining a multi-farm CSA or using a regional food hub to meet this growing call for local food. For more information, visit our website.
Great. Thank you, Laura. So this was a little animation that we did just to just to acknowledge that, you know, because of the pandemic, there was a real concern by consumers, and they were interested in where their food was coming from and whether or not it was being handled properly. And so we just wanted to sort of continue the story that we started with some research that we did in 2018. This is a report that I generated then, and it consists of interviews that were done with 12 different entities that have actually formed as independent legal entities, independent for-profit legal entities. I encourage you to read it. A lot of the things that we're going to go over today are mentioned in this particular report. But I do want to mention that there were some lessons learned and some quotes that I drew from the report that I think is important for you to hear. One of those quotes is, "We tested our collaboration first by working together for several years before deciding to formally organize as a corporation. This allowed us to see our personalities would mesh." Another quote, "You must have the right people involved. Getting independent farmers to work together is the biggest challenge." I think we can all agree with that. "Someone must understand the business of marketing the product. Otherwise, you need to hire a professional." Another quote, "A cooperative can be a very cumbersome structure and at times hard for members to think cooperatively." So we're going to go into some of these concerns a little bit later, but I think it's important to direct you to this resource. Next slide. So this is a map that shows the locations of the different entities that were interviewed. Again, I do want to say that from this report, these entities were formally organized as separate business entities. These are not a loose collaboration or collaborative. These are actually, you know, recognized as legitimate legal entities. And one of those entities is with us today, the Sandhills Farm to Table Cooperative, and we'll be talking to Mandy Davis in just a little bit. Next slide. Robin?
All right. Thanks, Becky. So we want to talk a little bit about a more current project in early 2021 with support from North Carolina Cooperative Extension Local Food Program team. We started a project to interview organizations that include some form of multi-farm collaborations in order to see how their organizations were set up and how they were weathering the COVID pandemic. And so we're going to go through sort of that process. Next slide. All right, so the overall questions we had hoped to answer and that were kind of coming up for us were, during COVID, why have some small-scale farmers seen an increase in sales and others haven't? And also kind of partly answer this, CFSA survey indicated that online presence improved sales. So we wanted to kind of learn more about that through conducting some case studies. We wanted to know, what role did having a brick and mortar food hub or a multi-farm CSA or farmers markets play in increasing sales for small scale farmers? And we wanted to know how these multi-farm entities changed business models to address food security and food safety concerns. So like was mentioned, what were the pivots and how did those changes increase sales? So next slide, please. You know, what we were hoping to get out of that project was measuring the difference between pre-pandemic sales and 2020 sales, measuring the number of farmers participating in these entities during the pandemic sales, and how that number might have changed before and after. Determine what operational changes they've made during that period. And like we mentioned, what the impact. So these are kind of the questions that these guided the questions that we asked in the case studies. Discover whether any new relationships were made during this time and how those relationships may have strengthened the local food system in the area. And then develop a list of best practices for the multi-farm collaborations. Next slide, please. So some of the examples of the participants were food hubs, farmers market, cooperatives, nonprofit corporations, and even some more informal like handshake models. We wanted to see what emerged during this time that might prove to be a good model for multi-farm collaborations. So this presentation today is a precursor to an agent training that is informed by these interviews and the findings from the case studies. Next slide, thank you. And so we'd hoped to interview 15. We were able to interview 13 really great contributors to North Carolina's local food system. There were some other great examples, of course, that may not be here. Some folks may have been too overwhelmed at the time to do the interview or just had a different structure than what we were looking for. Really, our focus for the 2021 research was on the type of collaborations that develop kind of organically, either through this pivot caused by necessity due to COVID pandemic or through cooperative arrangements that came about as a result of maybe a nonprofit's mission to improve access to healthy foods. So some pivots that may have come up when more people did not have access to healthy food. So these are some of the great folks. And so that the three words that arose from the interviews were pivot, cooperate, and collaborate. And by pivot, so pivot means to turn or change direction, perhaps even in a drastic way. Many of us felt that pivot during COVID in different ways. Pivot, also pivotal, is of crucial importance in relationship to the development of success of something else. So this is pivot and change, but also pivotal as in crucial. And some of the lessons learned were a result of some pivots that provided examples of resilience for small farms. Cooperate, which means working together. It can also mean assisting someone or complying with requests. So the different ways that the folks work, farmers or other entities work together, was really important in this. And then finally, a key word that was gathered was collaborate. And that's kind of for planning or building a new partnership, especially to create something new. And there were many examples of collaboration that arose from the pandemic that we learned about from our interviews and that we're excited to share about a little today. So I'm going to hand it over to Laura.
All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Laura Lauffer, and I've had the great pleasure to work with Hannah and Alan Edwards at Yonder's Farmers Market to help them through their pivot. This top picture shows them at their original farm-to-table restaurant in Franklin, North Carolina, in Macon County, which is far out west. And the bottom picture shows the very beginning part of their grocery store. And so we're going to learn a lot about their project. We're going to interview Hannah today, but we also did a fantastic video with the Fork to Farm team at NC State. So we're going to show you this short video.
The way that I view food is on a level of humanity too, and how it brings people together. I'm Hannah Edwards, and my business with my husband is yonder.
Originally, we kind of thought that we would start a market and restaurant, and the whole purpose of our restaurant was to source things as locally as we could. We just decided to do it. We updated the restaurant, and we opened in March of
2018. Yeah. The interesting murmurs, like in the room, of just like, I've never had food this good. And it's because it was like harvested that day or brought to us that day. And it was with thought and preparation and love.
My name's Carl. This is Vivian, and we're on our farm. The name of our farm is Cultivate Gardens. When we first moved here and decided we wanted to start a farm, we realized that there was no real farm-to-table restaurants here, and that was kind of surprising because there are a lot of farms here. Less than a year after we moved here, they opened the restaurant, and so we decided that they were going to be our first restaurant that we approached. We first met Carl and Vivian at yonder at the counter. We were cooking, and they approached us about, was there anything that we needed?
Just that first exchange where it's like, yeah, this could totally work, and we're kind of neighbors even.
We really want to build a community around agriculture. It's kind of our whole aim and we were open for about 2 years, and COVID happened.
When we knew we were losing the restaurant and like that was a done deal, and we had to come to terms with that, we had to get up and get something done because our livelihood was at stake, our farmers' livelihoods, because all of them were just like, the gardens are producing, like we have to have an outlet. And in 7 days, we pivoted to this online platform.
When Yonder started this website, this online market, it really provided
answer to our prayers.
Right. It did. Probably a lot of farmers' prayers. That really not only has provided an outlet for our produce, but it's opened a lot of doors as far as there's a lot of things that we would probably never have sold to Yonder, the restaurant. And now the Yonder's farmer market, basically we can sell anything we have. I think that over time, the food movement will get bigger in Franklin, especially with COVID. I think people are kind of starting to think about their food more.
We've seen our business ramp up. We've seen people wanting to buy local. Mountain communities like this can feed each other.
Great. I always think that's so beautiful, and it really is that beautiful. Oops. I gotta get this right with this video thing here. Hold on. To advance it. Okay. So, Becky, am I handing it over to you, or am I still on this one?
You're still on this one.
Okay, great. So what is collaborative farming? It's a farming business that results from actions of 2 or more persons or organizations working together to achieve a higher degree of profitability than they would individually. So that's an extremely broad definition. And so what we have found and what we wanted to share with y'all today are all of those different levels of collaborative farming, from handshake that moves on into more formal experiences. So we have the degrees of collaboration. So a handshake deal or a favor. One example we have are like 2 farmers at a farmer's market. I'm out today. I can't make it to market. Will you take my produce? Sure. I'm happy to help you out. And the difference there is that it's collaborative and that both farmers know it's reciprocal. If something like that happens to me, she can have my back as well, versus volunteering. I'm not volunteering to help you out. This is something that, we're in it together. So that's kind of like the entry level of a collaborative like that. Sharing farm equipment is another one. Why should we both have, this one unique piece of equipment, let's go in together and share it. That's another way. And that gets into the oral or written agreement or contract. You could even go as far as land and equipment leases, temporary employment contracts, farm business operating agreements, and marketing agreements. And then to the nth degree is for protection of everybody as you develop is the independent legal entity with partnerships, corporation, cooperatives, LLCs, and nonprofits. And the resources that the report and study that Becky had done that we led the session with is a really good resource for that, as far as, to guide you in that deeper process. All right, Becky.
Great. So now we're going to talk about how farmers start collaborating, going from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat. So in the first second, there has to be a need. The pandemic has uncovered flaws in our global food system, as well as the challenges to the local food system. Farmers markets, some of them closed early on and then later, have been limited by social distancing guidelines. And how do they pivot? Many switched to online ordering systems and drive-through pickups in order to meet consumer needs. But what about those markets that didn't, or they simply closed? Could the farmers themselves have organized in a similar fashion by offering online ordering systems for customers to use, as well as a convenient pickup spot? The answer is they could have. A case in point is there were 2 farmers who used to sell to local restaurants independently, but they have now worked together to offer produce bags and box pickups at the restaurants that they used to sell to. The restaurant, which is now closed, has cooler and aggregation space in their kitchen for the farmers to work together to fill orders. And it's my understanding that the majority of single farm CSAs in the state did well, not only with their repeat customers who have annual subscriptions, but if they switch to an online ordering system, they also have sporadic single customer orders. So the question is, if there are a lot of small farmers, can they organize to form a multi-farm CSA? And the answer is yes, they can. The form of that CSA may vary from a very informal arrangement, but it can also be a separate legal entity, which is what we are going to be talking about a little bit later. Next slide.
Sorry, guys, hold on a second. Uh-oh. Okay.
There you go. Oh, well, we missed the second.
There you go.
Okay. In the second, one, ideally 2 farmers should champion the organizational effort. So while you are going to learn about a lot of different groups that have been led by a nonprofit organization or otherwise, we suggest that farmers be there from the beginning and champion the organizational effort. Next slide. So in the third second, the common good must be prioritized. Interested farmers need to ask themselves, is what they're doing in terms of their own individual actions appropriate or beneficial for the greater good? In other words, any farmer involved in a collaborative must ask themselves whether or not their actions are going to benefit their so-called business partners. And an example of that is I'm aware of a cooperative that sold to a restaurant. This is pre-pandemic. And they used an online marketing platform, but that platform also allowed individual accounts to be created for each of the members of the cooperative. And then the restaurant started contacting the individual farmers instead of the cooperative. And the result of that is that the cooperative started failing because the members were competing against one another. And ultimately, that cooperative has disbanded. Next slide. So multi-farm collaborations are actually a thing. They kind of started out. There's a lot of examples of multi-farm collaborations that you can read about in Australia and in Ireland. There are certain laws that have been passed in order to support multi-farm collaborations. And in that respect, I'm talking about an entity relationship. But there are a lot of considerations that need to be dealt with before deciding to go into business with one another. So, so in addition to having a need, leadership and common platform in the early seconds of organizations, successful farmer collaborations are dependent on sort of the 8 little tiles there. So the question is, do they have a history of working together? If a farmer is generally viewed as being selfish or in it for themselves, they should not join the collaborative effort. You should also consider your own personal circumstances. Do you need to join the collaborative because you're not making it on your own or nearing retirement or wanting to expand or scale up? Third, consider your individual personal interests and build on the skill sets of everyone involved. Who's good with numbers? Who has web and social media skills? Who's good with logistics? Who has good broadband? A fourth consideration are, what are the risks of joining a collaborative farming business? How are decisions made? What happens when things fall apart? Fifth, what are your personal farm goals versus the goals of the collaborative? Sixth, how compatible are your collaborators? I can't tell you how many times collaborations have fallen apart because people start fighting with one another. How good a communicator are you? How transparent is the organization you're forming or you are working with? How much do you trust your collaborators? And how flexible can you be? Does the collaboration have all the talent that it needs? Are there gaps? Do you need to hire a professional to fill those gaps? Should you consider hiring a general manager? Finally, do you share common values with your collaborators? And are they, and I'm sorry. Finally, what resources are available to a collaborative venture versus an individual?
Sorry, guys.
Great. So
hold on. I can't go. I'm trying to figure out how to go backwards. Uh-oh.
You're going forwards.
I know. I can't get it to go backwards. Okay, there we go.
Keep going. Up.
Here.
Yes. Okay. So I believe it was Laura who talked about the 3 different levels of collaboration, the one being the handshake, the second one being more of an agreement, and the third being the separate legal entity. So the handshake farmer collaboration is one of sort of informal mutual aid, where you're going to help on the farm or at the market. A good example of this is where farmers work together for bulk ordering of materials and supplies. Next slide, please. So the second level, the one of an agreement or contract collaboration, we're going to use as an example is your typical multi-farm CSA. There may be a sort of an informal, not a separate business entity, but there may be agreements, in particular marketing agreements, that the farmers enter into with each other or with the aggregator. So things to consider with the multi-farm CSA is management. So how will the CSA be managed? Which online platform will be used, and how will payments to farms be made? And Robin or Laura, if you could put in the chat the link that we have there, Hannah Dankbar of NC State Extension prepared sort of a cheat sheet on the various online sales platforms, and it's a good analysis of the different fee structures. And if you are considering going online, this would be a great resource for you to use. Next slide, please. So this slide is of a program that I've been very involved with called Vacationer Supported Agriculture. I included this slide. This is sort of our impact sheet. It's been around for 4 years now. But what's important to show is that this whole program of Vacationer Supported Agriculture is basically built on a series of oral agreements between an aggregator, which in some cases is a nonprofit organization, in other cases is a primary farm operation. And it's an oral arrangement between the aggregators and various farmers in the region. And those arrangements, those oral agreements, are what provide supply to vacationers coming to, in most cases, to coastal destinations. And we've grown that program over the last 4 years. We started in Brunswick County, and you can see there's a lot of green. We have some great partners down there. I see that April is in the audience, and she's with Men and Women United. They have been aggregated there and has really built quite a network of farmers. And then we've also gone up the coast. But I have put this in so that you can see that we can have collaborations without going into that third level of a separate legal entity, but just through oral agreements. Next slide, please. So you want to think of a multi-farm CSA as a virtual community grocery store for local farm products. So, and the most important thing to remember with a multi-farm CSA is that you want to provide convenient access to your consumers. And that convenience, that's the one that's going to determine the logistics that will have to be dealt with that multi-farm collaboration, because you want to make sure that your consumers know where they are supposed to pick up, or where their box or bag is going to be delivered. And it's also important to make sure that you have someone in charge of making sure that you have good customer service. Next slide, please. So when considering product aggregation, ask yourselves, is one of the farms centrally located? Is there a local church or agency which has good available space? So always think of convenience for your customers. For extension agents, there's some great resources to use with farmers with respect to production planning. And we're gonna talk to our panel about production planning, which is one of the major issues with respect to a multi-farm collaboration. And with production planning, you want to ask these 4 questions. What crops would the grower like to supply? How many weeks could the grower supply of each crop? What are the weekly volumes of crops the grower would like to sell? And what would the grower's total volumes to be sold for the year? Packaging is another concern. Farmers may bulk order cartons and containers, and they should also consider using brands like Piedmont Grown, Appalachian Grown, or whatever the particular brand is for your region. Next slide, please. So each farm, this has to do with grading and post-harvest handling and food safety. Each farm should follow the same guidelines. So whatever collaboration you have, you need to make sure that all the farms participating in that collaboration are all following the same guidelines for grading and post-harvest handling, and they all should follow a food safety plan, and if possible, be GAP certified. And Laura or Robin, if you would put the link in the chat to the materials from Seth's regarding grading and packing and how to handle different vegetables. Great. So another thing to consider is there a time window for drop-off of produce? Need to know who's responsible for aggregation. Will each farm be bringing produce ready to deliver, or will the produce be commingled? And who is responsible for cleanup? And I know we're going to hear a lot about that from both Catherine Elkins from the Carteret Local Food Network and Mandy Davis from Sand Hills Farm to Table. Next slide. So important questions to answer before you begin any sort of multi-farm CSA or other form of collaboration. Ask yourself, do you need a memorandum of understanding or other written agreement between the farms? Next question, do you need extra liability insurance to cover the aggregated operation? And finally, you need to figure out how your bills are going to be paid and how money is going to be dispersed. Next slide. So a larger scale community collaboration, we don't want to, you can have a collaboration between 2 or more farms. You can also have a larger scale community collaboration that is led by a nonprofit that's interested in local food system development. It can be organized by a food council. It can be organized by extension. It's a group that can be a convener for the community and make sure that farmers are represented, that consumers are represented, and that this collaboration will represent the common good. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of the farmers who make up the Carteret Local Food Network, and we're going to hear more about the Carteret Local Food Network in our panel in just a minute. There's about 30 or so farmers in that picture. Next slide, please. This final slide is probably the most formal of multi-farm collaborations. This speaks about cooperative formation. It gives you the steps that you need to take in order to form a cooperative. Again, it's very important to have as your first step a facilitator or organizer. And I just want to add that having farmers be the champions, get the word out is key, but it's important to have that independent third party facilitator there facilitating the conversations. Second step is to schedule some sort of organizational meeting among the farmers. And at the organizational meeting, make sure that you identify that common goal, that you have identified who your champions are going to be, and also to form a steering committee. And that steering committee will address the legal, financial, food safety, and marketing issues that are sure to need to be considered by your collaboration. You need to identify any regional partners that might be able to help you with grant funding or otherwise. And then at the organizational meeting, it's important to develop work groups to determine where the product is going to be aggregated, whether it's going to be at a brick and mortar food hub, or if it's going to be at a particular farm, or a church, or at a restaurant. You know, we've seen all of these as being aggregation sites. You also need to have a work group that will determine how the product will be aggregated, whether it's going to be in a standard box, or just how deliveries are supposed to take place to the aggregation site, you know, what their standards are with respect to that. And then also you need a work group to determine who will be aggregating and who will be distributing. We've seen farmers delivering product. We've seen youth groups delivering product. We've seen volunteers aggregating and delivering product, as well as paid staff. And so I think that our panelists will be able to give you a nice overview of the different ways of managing aggregation and distribution. And then finally, for that multi-farm collaboration, you need to select a consultant, an attorney, an accountant, some outside third-party professional who can help you navigate all of the tax and legal considerations that you might have as, you're providing food. So you have to be concerned about those types of things. Next slide. So this is a slide of some of the volunteers. Mandy, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but some of the volunteers that have been part of Sandhills Farm to Table, and we will hear more from Mandy in a minute about them. Next slide, please. So key learning from the interviews that we did in 2021, these are not in any particular order. First, we need a lot of cold storage in this state to assist with these multi-farm collaborations, to allow for deliveries and aggregation. 2, you absolutely have to have a manager or an organizer to facilitate operations, and we're going to hear a little bit about the history of that from our panel. 3, you need production planning to facilitate the season's long supply and variety of produce. And 4, there needs to be excellent communication between the collaborators for a smooth operation. Next slide. So as I mentioned in the beginning, this study is primarily to benefit or to inform a curriculum that we are developing for our extension agents so that they can play a significant role in the creation and development of multi-farm collaborations. We think of the extension agents as being a connector for farmers, as well as a facilitator of organizational meetings. What we suggest to our agents is that they know their farmers and their enterprises. They know their ag suppliers and local food sales outlets so that they can provide that information and those resources to their farmers. They also need to know the farm-to-table restaurants so that they can connect small farms to those restaurants. And finally, our extension agents need to know nonprofits in the area that are focused on local food system development. All right, I think that is it now for the presentation. Robin, I think it shifts to you now.
Well, this is great. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Laura. I think it's time to hear from folks on the ground that are doing the work, making things happen. So our panelists are Mandy Davis from Sandhills Farm to Table. Let me get that up somewhere else. And Catherine Elkins from the Carteret Local Food Network, and Hannah Edwards from Yonder Community Market. So I believe they are now invited into. We can get rid of the slide if we need to. All right, we got all 3 of you here, so it'd be great to hear from you all. And I think it would be good to start with. We heard a little bit about your organizations during the talk. So it would be helpful to hear from each of you, why did you begin collaborating with other farms, food hubs, or other food distributors? I know, Hannah, you mentioned in the video, during COVID, but, why decide to collaborate with others versus go at it alone? And maybe Mandy, let's start with you. Oh, you got to unmute.
Here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Mandy Davis with Sandhills Farm to Table Cooperative. I'm based out at the Sandhills Ag Innovation Center in LB Food Hub, and we serve Moore County, Cumberland, Lee, and a little bit of Rockingham, or the Richmond County area as well. We are a multi-farm CSA. This is our 12th year of delivering produce to the area. Things have changed a lot from the beginning with different farms and producers and all, but we are still managing to bring food to our customers here. So there's certain questions that we wanted to start with, or do you want me to just tell you a little bit more about what we do?
So I think maybe it's a double part question. Why did you begin collaborating with other farms, food hubs, and food distributors, and how has that collaboration grown? You talked about how the number of farmers and number of customers has grown, but so why did you begin collaborating? And then also, from beginning to now, like, was there an evolution from handshake to organized, or how has that collaboration grown?
Okay. Well, 12 years ago, it was an idea from a couple of local people that wanted to get more local farms just to diversify with what they were growing and grow our local farmers markets. We really didn't have a whole lot going on and available to the public at that time. So since kind of go back and forth a little bit, because of COVID and our facility that we pack in now, those were kind of big changes that happened within our cooperative. We are now in a GAP certified facility, whereas in the prior years, we didn't have to require that for our farmers, but now that's a requirement, which has helped us a lot. But also, I feel like it has deterred a lot of the smaller farms, which is what our mission is to support the smaller farm. But we, so with that kind of, in a nutshell, explains the difference in the amount of farms that we are working with, I guess. We do have a kind of a handshake agreement, I guess, with our farmers. We have a meeting every year, a food planning or crop planning meeting. And we basically let them know by way of survey for our customers of what they want to see more of in a box or what they don't want to see any more of. And we just give them feedback from, the different customer service that we've had throughout the year. And so with that, we plan according to what the farmers currently grow, and we try to get them to grow different things to bring more, variety to customers. So
it sounds like originally there weren't as many market opportunities for farmers, so that was one of the reasons to kind of start collaborating to be able to fill a bigger market with small farms. Is that right?
Yes. And now, honestly, I feel like it's almost gone the opposite direction in our area because we've got so many farmers markets and so many local farm stands that have popped up, especially through COVID. I think a lot of them were not only trying to provide for us, but they were doing their own thing at their own farms and created their own produce box programs, which honestly made our numbers go down a little bit and made it a little bit harder to find the produce because they could sell it right there at their farm, which was great. But it overall hurt the cooperative a little bit because there wasn't as many to collaborate. So yeah.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for that kind of intro. Catherine, would you mind just talk a little bit about intro and then, why did y'all begin collaborating? And then how has that collaboration grown?
Good.
Was there an evolution, that sort of thing?
Thanks, Robin. Thank you. My name is Catherine Elkins. I work with Carteret Local Food Network. Carteret County is home to Beaufort and Morehead City if people come to that way for a vacation. So we're a nonprofit, so we have a different mission than some of your other guests here. We always say that our mission is to strengthen the connection between local farmers and their customers. I came here to Carteret County about 20 years ago, having a bunch of good experiences working with the Carborough Farmers Market, and I was panicking over what I was going to eat moving here. There were at that time about 8 traditional farmers, and we've lost only 2 of those, but we've gained another almost a dozen extra farmers small farmers, to be sure, in the time that we've put into Carteret Local Food Network. So for collaboration, that really did hit home hard right about the time of the pandemic. We worried that many of our farm stands may not see the traffic they were used to. The farmers markets, we now have two new ones since we got here in the last 12 years. And they were panicking over how they could safely open to their customers. And so collaboration was one of our focus points beginning last spring. We pushed to the front of the list the veggie van, which delivers produce around like Feast Down East uses their locomotive. They our farm and food director Chef Caroline delivers food to 6 or 8 locations on a schedule during the week. So that was a good moment for collaboration. And the other one was that we started with the produce box. It's really what we should call it, a produce box as opposed to a CSA. But the term CSA is something more people seem to be familiar with. So that is also a collaborative effort. We put out a survey in the beginning of March and asked what could we expect from each farm over the next 18 weeks. What could we put from your farm into our box? And then we also participated with Becky's program of VSA, Vacationer Supported Agriculture, which really was very successful. Thank you, Becky. We had a great team, and I think success was in our favor. That picture that you showed of all those farmers in our area was pre-COVID, and that's something that we wanted to do to thank the farmers, bring them all together into one nice restaurant. We had a very generous chef that would do all this for us, just to be able to give the farmers a chance to meet each other on a social evening, that there was very little agenda. You just get together at the table and break bread for a couple hours, meet the new guys, meet the old guys, see what everybody's doing. So that helped us launch a collaborative effort when the pandemic hit.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Good.
And so it sounds like there was an opportunity to make sure the small farmers in the area had a market, but also to provide produce for not only folks that were local, but also some folks that were vacationing in. Okay, that's great.
That's right.
Yeah.
Really good.
Thank you, Catherine. And so Hannah, would you talk a little bit more about what y'all's current structure is, why you began collaborating, and sort of like maybe how that has evolved?
Sure. We have quite a wild and long story. So to really, like, what we do now was a natural pivot. So going back to 4 years ago, we moved here 5 years ago. I was in the hospitality industry pretty much since I could work. Food has always been a love of mine. I wanted to open a restaurant with my husband when we moved out here to the mountains. The reason why we decided to do that from scratch and out of nowhere was because we moved to a town we weren't familiar with. And when we got here, we realized we had no food options. And we were like, okay, well, this is our calling. This is what we have to do. So we're in a really small town in Macon County, which is at the western tip of the North Carolina state. We are a growing city, but I would say when we started the restaurant, we were roughly like 3,200 full-time residents in this town. So it's a very small town. It was kind of an amazing thing to start the only farm-to-table restaurant in Macon County. So that's what we did. It was immediately popular because there was nowhere to eat around here. So we were successful from the beginning, stayed successful for our entire 2 years that we were in business. We were going places. It was a really great thing. And we were supporting around 3 to 4 farms in Macon County with that concept. And then other local purveyors of food. So when the pandemic happened, that's a whole long story of why we even exited the restaurant industry. We did not fail. It's really an unfortunate situation with a landlord and long story. So we had to pivot, and we had to pivot quickly. We had to move everything that we were doing into this building that needed to be rehabbed. That's why in the video that some of the shots of what is now our store, that was under construction. Like, we didn't even have doors. We didn't have windows. Like, that was all fresh paint. We were doing everything off these little pallet tables to pivot into a retail store through COVID. So shut our restaurant down it took maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks for all of that to end, move everything out, and then start this new thing. And really, through the existence of COVID until recently, we were online only. And we only did online ordering over the weekend through an online website that we built in 7 days after losing the restaurant. And then we just boxed everything up, bagged everything up on this day that we could all come together and agree on, which it ended up being Thursdays. And then everybody would pick up on Fridays, Thursdays or Fridays, their boxes, all contactless payment, all curbside. So it was a natural pivot from the restaurant being locally sourced to then just really hone in on the local food movement in this town where it's needed, to just therefore grab a hold of that, make it bigger and better with this retail situation that we're in now. And it started slow for sure, and small, but now, as of today, we are so busy. We're so busy. Our store is open 7 days a week. And we have a 3-door produce cooler, and we support 9 farms now, whereas we were supporting just 3 at the restaurant.
Yeah, that's great. I'm hearing, so I would like to invite Laura into the Zoom room or the Restream room. So, some of the themes, the desire to have good food, like that seems number one. That flexibility of that, it sounds like you all have had, and then also relationship building sounds like that's been really important throughout this time and even before COVID. So Laura, I'm going to pass the mic to you, and I can leave the little setting now, Rachel, if needed.
Cool. Well, great to keep talking with y'all. One of the things that I know comes up a lot with farmers and this concept is, how do you plan ahead for who grows what? Not everybody needs a ton of Napa cabbage the 3rd week of October. So as you have progressed, I know Sandhills Farm to Table, you guys have been at it the longest. So if you could maybe start with, how do the farmers determine what to grow each season?
Well, this year, for starters, I have probably dealt with between 15 to 20 local farms. So that's who I've been able to purchase produce from, plus other items. We do have some value added things that is included in that number, like meat and cheese and eggs and honey. But when we have our meeting, which this last year wasn't in person, we did a a lot of emails and phone conversations back and forth. But my take on it kind of changed a little bit from what it used to be. Some farmers and some soil just grow better produce than the next person, not really, just by, that's just how it is. So I was able to, since I was dealing with a lot of the same farms again, I was able to kind of request, or suggest that this is probably what I'm going to buy the most from you. And our customers, this year we're on average about 250 boxes, which is about half of what we were last year. So it's been tricky and very interesting. I get asked all the time why such a change in the numbers, and I could go on and on about that. But so we basically, most of our farms don't just grow for farm to table. They have a lot of other outlets that they use. So I check in with them every week, and most of them grow a lot of the same items, but if there's something special, like kohlrabi is something that not everybody would try to grow, or certain types of carrots, or just unique items, that we don't have a lot of in this area, we request that. And some farmers will raise their hand and say, I'll try to do that this year. And others will say, no, I'm absolutely not going to try that, so it's a conversation between us all. And we do have a board that has 2 farmer representatives on there that are in charge of communicating with the farmers and kind of letting them know some things, if we need more of one thing or don't need something, but fortunately, because our community is so close, there's been times that I would get a call with, excess squash or zucchini. And if I couldn't use it because that's what everybody had, I would find another source for them, or I would at least help direct them to another place so that they could still sell it in some way. So I think that kind of answered your question as far as our meeting and just collaborating that way. And, everybody growing what they do best.
And Catherine, can you answer how you managed?
We found that was also the right way to do it. We also had our veggie van. So in case someone had 1,000 pounds of squash, we knew we were only going to put 3 squash in each CSA bag, but we will have an opportunity to sell it for them later in the week. So we built 2 walk-in coolers this past spring to address our need to keep the produce at a safe temperature and a safe place. So that certainly helped handle extra food. Everybody seems to have the extra squash at the same time.
So Hannah, did you work with growers around diversity, making sure that your bags could have a unique mix of veg for your customers?
Well, I guess our approach was kind of different, especially through the panic of the pandemic and all of the weirdness going on, and just trying to keep ourselves together, really. We put online what the farmers had, and what we are working with here in our town are really small market gardens. So we're not working with big farms with a lot of acreage. Most of our farmers have 10 to 17 acres and nothing more. So for instance, like online, we would put kale online, but it would be kale from 3 different farmers. And they all knew that everybody's kale was going on there. But we knew that we were so busy that all of that kale was going to be gone anyway. And it just so happened that it really worked out in our favor and the farmers' favor, where I don't think we left anybody out that entire time. Or was Carl over here like stuck with all of his kale, even though it was online, because we sold nothing but Paul's kale. Like, no, like, I don't think we had a situation like that ever. So there wasn't necessarily this collaborative thing going on during this immediate time of COVID. As things have progressed and we have a storefront and we're busy and 7 days a week, yada, yada, there's a little bit more conversation going on with everyone each week via text message that's real quick, or some, structured emails, meetings, stuff like that. But for the most part, like, there are a lot of people growing the same things, but it all sells. And because we're in just this very small boutique sort of situation, I think if we were any bigger than we are, it would just be different. So we're kind of fortunate in that regard. Everyone tells us what they have. We buy it outright. We stock the cooler, and then we do it again maybe 2 or 3 days later. However, something recently that has happened with Carl, who was in the video that y'all saw, he just gave me his Johnny Seeds catalog, and I'm going through and I'm highlighting for him what I think he should try to grow this coming year that no one else is growing and that we have trouble getting and sourcing, especially because he's right around the corner from us, and it's something we can easily either help him with or go harvest ourselves or swing by and pick up. And he has expanded his acreage, so now he has 10 more acres, I think, that he has been working on this whole year to plan for 2022.
That's amazing.
I'm excited about that, and I think that'll be a totally new ball game.
That's great. I've heard of that model before with chefs who have really tight relationships with their farmers, or like, try this beautiful beet, it looks great on a plate, kind of thing. So that's wonderful. To your knowledge, do farmers share other experiences or activities? Do they collaborate in other ways besides aggregating produce? Like, are folks doing bulk buying of, say, feather meal or compost, or sharing equipment? We've
had collaboration where for travel and deliveries. We certainly see some of that. We know that there's folks who are getting one large order of clamshells, or being able to buy from another farm's supply of delivery devices, those packagings. So we haven't had any collaborative buying of seeds or any machinery, not in Carteret yet.
Okay. Mandy or Hannah, do you have any awareness of those types of relationships?
Yeah, sorry, Mandy.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yes. So since we opened our retail front, and all of that's been going well, so all of our farmers have, through this, met each other, and it's so cool. Like, me and Alan always introduce everyone to each other, and it doesn't even have to be farmer to farmer. So our bread bakers, we work with 2 in town that are exclusive to Yonder. They all go pick herbs and vegetables from our farmers and then use them to do seasonal breads. So that's been a new, very cool relationship that's been happening. Even our customers go tour certain farms if they are invited. We make those connections. Rick at Mountain Song Farm has been letting a couple of other farmers borrow his tractor for like a week at a time. There's definitely some bulk organic chicken feed things happening between Woodnote, sourcing it from Winding Stair Farm, and everybody's buying in bulk. And then I think 2 of our other farmers who supply chickens are buying that from them. And I think it's cutting costs and just making everything better for everyone. So organically and naturally and in a very beautiful way, this has been going on since the summer. And we've been watching it and hearing all these conversations in the background. They all stand around our store and hang out and chat. And then we hear of them hanging out last week together or doing projects or cutting firewood together. So it's been really cool.
Thank you, Hannah. Mandy, do you want to share your knowledge about that collaboration?
Sure. I've kind of likewise to what Catherine and Hannah both said. I know that there is a lot of delivery collaboration. I don't and purchases of material and stuff like that. I know of a few farms who have their own farm stand that maybe would buy produce from another farmer to have at that farm stand instead of going to the Raleigh market or wherever to get it to, you know, have more things available. So yes, I think that they are all pretty close in that way and share a lot of those types of deliveries and farm use equipment at times as well.
Okay. So I'm gonna have one last question before we switch to see if we have any questions from our audience. Do what online platforms for ordering and keeping track of inventory have y'all tried? Maybe you've tried some and they haven't worked out, and you've tried others. Can you share those? And Mandy, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Okay. Yes, we do have our website platform is Delivery Biz Pro. So we use them and we're able to, we actually have 4 different boxes that we curate each week based on the availability. So I speak with the farmers that I know are growing things and curate the boxes by Friday. And then a customer has until Sunday evening to order. There are times that we don't have enough space in the box to put all the produce that might be available. So I can actually put those things online so that a customer can either build their own box essentially, or they will, you know, they can pick and choose which box they want. We try to make these 4 different boxes different enough. I mean, they may all have, you know, greens and squash, but it might be a different type of greens and squash. But online, they are also able to add the extra items and extra servings of produce that way. So we've been using that platform for a while now. I can't even remember what we were using beforehand, honestly, for comparison. So
okay. Can you repeat that again, just so that
Delivery Biz Pro
okay
is
great.
the platform.
Okay. How about you, Hannah? Which do you use now?
So when we were 100% online only, we kind of just kept our Square thing. We carried it over from the restaurant, determined that they had Weebly integrated with Square, and Weebly was a way that we could pay through Square for this platform that allowed us to design a very simple, straightforward website with an online store. You check out through Square, the customer does, and then we get a ticket. We were able to print the tickets with a printer that we already had from the restaurant, and then we would staple those to the bag or the box, and then that's how we filled each order. And we would always receive emails when a ticket came through, etc. So it seemed to work pretty well. Now we are still with Weebly. We just eliminated the order online because we're open 7 days a week now, and it's just too much to handle. I don't know if we're going to do it again or not. Probably not. But you know, we're still with Square, still with Weebly for our website. It's just not a very in-depth, detailed website, but it's pretty straight to the point, I suppose. And then and that's it.
Okay. Catherine, what do you use for your ordering platform?
We're using Farmers Register, and I think that's been very helpful to Caroline. It comes, I believe because we are participating in a study from the Veggie Van group, the folks out of Buffalo, New York. So Farmers Register is onto platform.
Okay, great. So I've got 2:16 here, and we're supposed to end at 2:30. I do have a couple of other questions, but I wanted to make time for folks in the audience. So if anybody in the audience has any questions, if you can type them in your chat, I believe that should work. I'm trying to see if I can maneuver to see if there's anything. Okay, here we go. How does liability insurance work? Individual farmers or collaborative cooperative buying the insurance? If a delivery service is provided, how are farmers shielded from liability in case of an accident on the road? Does anybody want to take a crack at that?
No, that's
all of our.
Oh. Go ahead.
All of our farmers are required to have a $1 million. In excess of $1 million certificate of liability insurance that we are named as an insured. So they carry their own insurance for their farm and their produce. And then Sandhills Farm to Table also has a policy that protects us for hopefully any kind of issue. So those all have to be renewed each year.
Mm-hmm. Catherine, are the farmers who you participate with insured?
Some are, yes. We have a liability policy for Carteret Local Food Network, and since we're buying the produce and now it's our asset, we've never had a claim, so we've never tested this, but I believe we are covered with this Farm Bureau policy to in case anybody's upset about the quality or safety of the food. Delivery service, and we do deliver the food. And if the farmers are shielded, I don't know if the farmers are protected when they come to our food hub to deliver. That's on them, I think. And our policy, our liability policy, would cover us when we're making a delivery, either the Veggie Van or the CSAs.
Okay. Sure. And Hannah, did y'all have requirements?
No requirements. It was just all, it's just a community space. I mean, we're insured through our business policy pretty heavily, but that's all we know. And I'm not sure about the individuals themselves.
Okay. Alrighty, I am not seeing, I could scroll backwards. I'm going to try to do backwards to see if I have any backward questions. Does anybody want to put another question in the chat, or Becky or Robin have any questions come up for you that you want to make sure that, I see here one of the things we do want to do is promote the NC Farms app. Catherine, do you want to talk about that?
I do like that app. Visit NC Farms on your phone is a project that Annie Baggett has been working on, and Carteret Local Food Network now participates, as does Craven and Onslow County, and it's gone further beyond even those two counties. And actually that's what our farmers refer to if they forget who the guy was with the great plan about the Jeep engine, and they can look up that farmer because they're all listed. Our farmers are listed, and they can find each other on that app, which is fairly robust. There's a lot of data in there and a lot of way to encourage the customers to be finding our farmers too. So,
right, and that's run out of the North Carolina Department of Agriculture, yes, and many extension offices are collaborating to work to promote the NC Farms app. So it's you know, if your county's not doing it as a farmer, you might want to reach out to your extension director and say that you think it's a good idea. You'd like to get on board. There are some resource constraints, but it can be done. Robin or Becky, I do have one more question if there's not another one in the chat, or if you guys don't have another one. Okay, Robin, do you want to come back on and chat?
I was just saying, I don't have any additional questions. I just really am very appreciative of our panel for joining us today and sharing the ins and outs of what can sometimes be a labor of love, but trying to get more local food accessible to more folks. So
great. So the last question I will ask is, you know, how have, you know, as we are coming out of COVID starting again, coming back out of COVID, how has that changed? I mean, the panic, you know, we are out of the panic. I feel we're out of the panic, but how has that changed your business models? And Hannah, we'll start with you this time.
Okay. I would say that for the first little while, we were not at all ready to open up to the public. So we existed online only, even though we did have a remodeled retail space somewhat. And then we got the coolers from y'all, and those were in place. And but we really just kept that as like some housing units for everything until we were ready to open up. And then on March 19th of this year, 2021, we decided to open up to the public. And when we did that, we kept it like Wednesday through Saturday. No, Thursday through Sunday is what it was. Because Wednesdays we were in Asheville doing all of our runs. And then we would come back into work and work Thursday through Sunday. And then I would say 7 weeks or so is when we decided to go to 7 days a week. And really in our county, we've been kind of lucky in the regard. There's not a whole lot of really intense scare around here. There's very few people around these parts. It's not like the city. It's not like other parts at all. It's not very heavily congested. And we built our space out so that we could open our big carriage doors and open our side doors and all of our windows to be like an open air market. So throughout all of the nice weather, we just kept our store completely open, had fans going, and we're just safe as we could be. And then here lately, we're still doing that. The weather's still great. And there's not really a whole lot of panic in Macon County, and we feel great. And people are definitely out shopping, and it's just been wonderful. So.
Okay. We do have another question I want to make sure we get to. Earlier in the slide set, there was a mention of encouraging farm collaboratives to become GAP certified for multi-farm CSAs. Have in your experience, are your farms becoming GAP certified, Mandy and Catherine? No.
Most of my farmers have. We did lose some that were very important to Sand Hills Farm to Table. I don't really know why. I think a lot of them realized that we were requesting them to be GAP certified where they have never had to do that before. And they just decided not to do it because they could sell most everything at their farm stand. But they were very much missed. I wish that they would, because I think that that's coming in the future to be able to provide that. And people are more, I don't know, in our area anyway, we definitely have a group of people that are not just interested in a local farm, but they want to know that, I mean, you can have a lot of local farms that aren't practicing very good, so I think people are aware of that. And overall, I'd say about half of our farms were able to do it. It did discourage the younger and the small, or not the younger necessarily, but the smaller farms, because if, you know, they couldn't justify the cost of being GAP certified, and if they didn't really have another market to sell it to, you know, they just said, well, we'll try again another year, or we're just gonna grow for our own family. So
okay.
yeah.
Can we scoot back to that question about how your markets have changed to GAP? I mean, pardon me, to COVID. You know, if there was, you know, a panic reaction to buy local and to load up, and that changed your business models, Mandy and Catherine. How has that changed now that we're hopefully in the clear? Catherine, you want to go first?
I think we're likely to schedule more veggie van stops. I think that's become something that we weren't sure would be successful, and it is. So distribution from our aggregating site to the spots around town has been very welcome. So I think that's likely to happen. I think there's a lot more people buying food without really going into the supermarket. We've seen all of those shopping services where people can just pick up their food by driving through. But I think people are getting their local produce not as easily. You know, the grocery stores don't have local, but and many of our farmers don't want to be delivering or making special concessions. They want customers to come to them.
Mandy, how has it changed your model during this COVID period?
Well, when in 2020, our numbers went crazy. I had to stop subscriptions because the farmers weren't ready. I wasn't ready. We just weren't ready at all for it. I mean, it was a great increase, but you can't plant something and it be ready within a couple of weeks. You know, it's to what we were needing at that time. And it was very interesting. At our end of year survey in 2020, I was expecting to have almost 100% resubscribe. And like I said earlier, it did drop to about half of that. I think in our area, a lot of people, and I've had a lot of customer service calls and emails that just said, you know, we decided to grow our own garden, and which is awesome. You know, a lot of people started growing their own, and maybe their friends or a small farm that they knew grew more to help provide for more friends and family. So I think that is a definite positive thing. But as far as helping our other local farms, it kind of, you know, those numbers dropped because so many other people were growing their own food. But we also have a home delivery service that jumped really high with numbers, especially last year. Not quite as much this year, but a lot of people were willing to pay, you know, a pretty nice delivery fee to have that produce fresh, you know, delivered to their door. So
right. Well, thank you. I'll echo what Robin said. You know, I do believe that there's a role for we folks in extension, but farmers really learn from hearing about what's happening on the ground. And so it's so important to have your voices here. And thanks you for taking time out of your very busy delivery schedules. And I'll hand it over to you, Becky. You're on mute. Oh, I can't hear you.
You're right. I am on mute. I just also wanted to thank each of our panelists. You all represent sort of different stages of collaboration, and I think that you had a lot of really great pointers for people who are thinking about collaborating. So thank you again. I'll be back in touch with you soon. And Rachel, I think that Laura, Robin, and I are finished now.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. This was packed with information, packed with great resources. So for folks joining live and for folks who are going to be able to join out and watch the recording later, I think this is going to be incredibly valuable. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.